2 years ago, I moved back to my hometown after my dad passed away. I thought the house would be comforting. I wanted it to be a place of healing. But everything felt strange and twisted, like I was watching a movie I used to love but couldn't remember the ending. I spent my first night arranging furniture. I recognized everything but felt disconnected. The floor creaked under my feet, echoing those childhood memories. Still, an unsettling chill brushed against my skin. I tried to ignore it. On my second night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. That's when I first heard it, a soft thud from the attic. I rationalized it was the house settling. Part of me urged me to check, but I was too tired to care. The sounds continued, a scraping noise that crawled under my skin. I wondered if it was just an animal, but deep down I sensed something was very wrong. Days passed and the noises became more insistent. I found my grandmother's old journals in the attic. They were filled with strange events from years ago, confession notes, stories of odd happenings. Some parts made me uncomfortable. I flipped through pages, reading her dense handwriting. Each word seemed to stir uncomfortable memories. It was as if she had left me a warning. The thudding in the attic matched the pounding of my heart. I decided to ask the neighbor about it. Mrs. Thompson had lived next door for decades. When I shared my experiences, her gaze turned serious. "Things have happened in that house," she said quietly. "You should be careful, dear." Her words felt like a heavy weight. A chill gripped my spine. I could tell this wasn't just local folklore. Shadows danced on the edges of my vision. Sometimes I thought I saw a figure, but it vanished when I blinked. I didn't know what to believe. Was I losing my mind, or was there some dark truth buried in my family's past? Every night, I sat in the dark, listening. There was a strange mix of fear and curiosity pulling me in. I felt like I was digging into secrets my family couldn't face. The thuds grew louder, and I began to doubt my sanity. My screams turned to silence. One night, as I approached the attic door, the thudding stopped. Silence filled the air, pressing down on me. I hesitated. Did I really want to know what was upstairs? Maybe my family's history was buried for a reason. The door handle felt cold in my hand. As I reached for it, my breath caught in my throat. Then I heard it again, softer this time, a whisper. "Lucy." My heart raced. The voice was familiar yet distant, almost pleading. I froze. I couldn't tell if I should call out or run. I stood there, shaken. What was waiting for me behind that door? I felt like I was being watched. I clutched the handle, torn between fear and the urge to know. And in that heavy silence, I realized I might be too late to turn back. I pushed open the attic door, my heart drumming in my ears.
The familiar scent of dust hit me first, mingling with a heavier, musty odor that felt almost suffocating. The wooden stairs creaked as I stepped inside, each sound echoing my anxiety. This was where the thudding lived. This was the root of my fears. The light switch flickered, hesitant, crowded the edges. Cobwebs filled in the corners, and a thick veil of dust lay over everything. I scanned the room, searching for something, anything that would explain the sounds. As I moved around the attic, my eyes caught on the far wall, a small trunk, partly obscured by a pile of old clothes. I hesitated before making my way to it. Something inside me urged caution, but my curiosity was stronger. I knelt beside it, pushing a few boxes away. The trunk was locked. A heavy padlock sat there, rusting and ancient. I ran my fingers over it, feeling the grooves of the metal. I couldn't help but wonder what secrets it held. Maybe there were more journals, more warnings for my grandmother. Suddenly, a sharp thump came from above. I jolted, my body stiffening. It felt like a response, a challenge. I didn't want to be here. I wanted to retreat, but my feet wouldn't move. I needed to know what was inside that trunk. I glanced around, looking for something to pry it open. Then I noticed an old hammer lying on a nearby shelf. I grabbed it. As I prepared to smash the padlock, I felt a rush of adrenaline course through me. This was reckless. I hesitated again, fear battling the urge to uncover the truth. A voice nagged at me. It was just an object. But what if it held the key to understanding my family's past? With a deep breath, I struck the lock. The metal rang out, echoing in the silence. The lock broke apart, clattering to the floor. I lifted the trunk's lid slowly, heart pounding as a cloud of dust rose into the air. I peered inside. An array of letters, photographs, and small trinkets greeted me. My heart sank, but one object caught my eye. A small framed photograph. I lifted it out, my fingers shaking. The image was faded, but I recognized the faces. My grandmother, young and vibrant, stood next to a man I had never seen before. They looked happy, but there was something unsettling in their smiles. I
Samuel. My breath caught. Who was Samuel? Why had I never heard of him? The thudding began again, louder this time. It echoed through the attic, resonating in my bones. Panic surged. I placed the photo back and slammed the trunk shut. Then everything went dark. The light flickered and died, leaving me in pitch blackness. I fumbled for the stairs, my heart racing. I could hear something moving in the dark. A low, dragging noise was closing in around me. My pulse quickened. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I was not alone.
I stood frozen in the dark, straining to hear over the sound of my own heartbeat. The dragging noise grew closer, each raspy pull sending chills down my spine. I could feel my breath quickening, a frantic rhythm that matched the growing tension in the air. "Hello?" I whispered, my voice barely breaking the silence. No response. Just that dragging sound, persistent and unnerving. I shook my head, forcing myself to focus. I needed to get out of the attic. I turned slowly, trying to remember where the stairs were. I stretched my arms out in front of me, feeling for any obstruction. The musty smell was suddenly overwhelming, and I could taste the dust on my tongue. With each cautious step, the floor creaked beneath me, reminding me that I was disturbingly alone. The dragging stopped. I held my breath, listening intently. Only silence. I took a step back, deciding that retreating to the light of the hallway was my best bet. Just then, I collided with something behind me. I spun around, heart racing as I reached for the hammer still clutched in my hand. The dim memories of light lingered in my mind, spurring me into action. I swung the hammer wildly, unsure if I'd hit anything, but desperate to defend myself. "Please," I shouted, the word tearing from my throat. "I just want to leave." To my shock, the dragging resumed, but this time it was joined by a low, guttural breathing. I could hardly process it. Was it even human? The noise echoed and reverberated through the attic. My fear mounted, making the air feel thick again. In a flash of desperation, I remembered the hammer. I turned, aiming for the trunk, and striking its surface in a wild flurry. The echo of metal on wood filled the space, almost masking the sound of whatever was in the shadows. That's when something shifted above me, rattling the old wooden beams. My blood ran cold. This rattling was too loud, too close. Before I could process it further, the attic door creaked open. The light from the hallway spilled into the room in a blinding wave, illuminating a figure standing in the doorway, someone I recognized. "Mom?" I called, relief flooding through me momentarily. But she looked different, eyes wide and frantic. "Get out of here," she hissed, her voice strained. "There's something in here." The words hit me like ice water. She had come looking for me. My heart grazed the line between relief and terror. "I need to get out," I said, scrambling toward her, but whatever was lurking in the shadows shifted again, something waiting to emerge. Before I could move, I saw it, a figure emerging from the darkness, pale and wretched. It reached out, claws beckoning, mouth twisted in a way no one could survive seeing. My mother moved to pull me back, but I felt a surge of panic. "Who is Samuel?" I yelled, eyes never leaving the specter that crept toward us. She hesitated, that single moment stretching infinitely. The figure lingered, seeming to feast on my uncertainty. "There's so much more to explain," she shouted over the sound of my mounting fear. Then, with one last chill-inducing breath, the lights flickered back on, revealing the full horror before us. The thudding ceased, but the atmosphere crackled with something unspeakable. And in that terrifying moment, I realized there were no easy answers, only the truth I was not prepared to face. I stepped back, my heart racing faster than I thought possible. The light flickered, and for a brief moment everything seemed alive. The dusty boxes, the old furniture, and most terrifyingly, the creature that loomed before us. My mother's voice echoed in my ears. "Get out of here!" I could feel her fear pounding in the air, mixing with my own. But it was the creature's presence that stole my breath. Its eyes glinted with a haunting hunger, a darkness that chased away any rational thought. "Mom, what is that?" I whispered, panic rising inside me. I felt lost. Confusion clouded my mind like a dense fog. She grabbed my arm, her grip urgent. "We need to leave, now." But before we could retreat, the thing lunged. It moved with a speed that defied reason, sending us stumbling backward. I tried to push my mother toward the stairs, but the narrow space felt impossibly constricted.
The creature's claws scraped the floor, leaving deep scratches, gnashing like a hungry beast. "Samuel!" my mother yelled again, her voice piercing the tension. "We have to break the connection." "What connection?" I shouted, desperation clawing in my throat. Fear flooded over me, merging with undeniable confusion. The creature paused, its twisted head cocking to one side, almost as if it were studying us. A heavy silence fell. I could hear my mom's shaky breaths as we both held our ground. "Samuel," I yelled, the name spilling out. "Who is he? Why is this happening?" In that heartbeat of silence, the creature melted back into the shadows, a specter of dread that seemed to listen to our questions. My mother's expression twisted in anguish. She ducked her head, finally revealing an answer I didn't want to hear. "Samuel was your brother," she whispered, the weight of her words crashing into me. "He died over 2 years ago, here in this house." The walls felt as though they were tightening around us. I searched her eyes, but all I found was regret. "What do you mean? Why didn't you tell me?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I thought we could move on. I didn't want you to know how he died. I thought what?" I cut in, my voice suddenly louder than the fear. "That this would go away." The creature shifted again, and an otherworldly wail echoed through the attic once more, shaking the very floor beneath us. "I thought if we stayed quiet, if we forgot," she stammered, but the panic in her voice fell away under the weight of something sinister. The realization sent me reeling backward as sorrow transformed into anger. "So, that's what it is. He's angry."
The wailing grew louder and surged through my bones, resonating with my shackled emotions. I trembled as the truth loomed larger. "Samuel needs closure, but he won't find it here," she cried, desperation spilling into her words. That's when I felt it, a cold draft sweeping through the room, chilling my skin. It carried whispers, like Samuel was reaching out, wanting to be heard. "Let me talk to him," I blurted, as clarity pierced my haze of fear. "No," my mother shouted, but there was no stopping me. I had to confront whatever horror lived in the shadows. As I faced the darkness in front of me, the weight of my brother's memory filled the air. And just like that, the depths of the unknown yawned wide before me. I took a slow step forward, my heart pounding a furious rhythm. The creature lingered in the shadows, its form shifting as if it were wading through thick fog. "Samuel," I murmured, my voice trembling. "I'm here." Silence enveloped me, thick and suffocating. The air felt charged, as if something was waiting, watching. My mother tugged at my shirt, desperation pooling in her eyes. "Don't," she warned, her voice barely above a whisper. But a growing sense of duty pulled me closer. It didn't feel like fear anymore. It felt like urgency, like a forgotten truth demanding to be uncovered. I had to know what happened to my brother, even if it meant facing the monster that had taken him away. "Samuel, if you can hear me," I called, my voice steadying. "I want to talk." For a moment, nothing changed. Then slowly, the creature edged into the dim light, revealing more of its twisted features. I gasped, suddenly recognizing the resemblance in the sharp angles of its face, the dampness of its skin. It wasn't just a creature. It was a shadow of my brother, twisted and contorted by anger and pain. "Please," I said, my breath hitching as emotion surged through me. "What do you need?" The shadows flickered around me like angry flames. The creature's eyes locked onto mine, filled with a haunting depth. It felt like a chasm was forming between us, a bridge over years of silence and unresolved grief. In that moment, I saw a flash of something else, a memory. Images spilled in my mind like old film clips. Laughter, brotherly games, and then darkness. I felt a knot of regret twist in my stomach. "I miss you, Sam. I should have remembered. Is that why you're here?" The wailing intensified, a ghostly echo of sorrow that almost brought me to my knees. I could see now that it wasn't just anger, it was desperation. Samuel was trapped in a place between life and silence, reaching out for something he couldn't find. The ground shook beneath me, a fierce tremor that jolted me back. My mother stumbled, her eyes wide with fear. "We have to get out, Samuel. He's angry." "He's not," I snapped. I couldn't look away from the creature, the familiar silhouette that held so much unresolved pain. "He just wants me to understand. Please, just give me a moment."
But before I could dive deeper, a sudden blast of wind surged through the room, knocking over old boxes and sending debris flying. The creature shrieked, the sound piercing my ears. "Samuel, no!" The chaos roared around us, and as I steadied myself, I noticed something glimmering amidst the ruined cardboard. My breath caught in my throat. That's when I saw it, a locket half buried in the dust, one I had only seen in old photos. Its surface gleamed under the flickering light, and as I reached for it, a realization hit me hard. The answers I sought were laying in that locket, and with them, an urgency I never knew. Suddenly, everything grew still. The creature loomed, staring directly at me, and I realized this wasn't just a hunt for closure. It was a hunt for me. "I found out who he was," I whispered as I gripped the locket tight, but that just made it worse. The locket felt cold against my palm, a tiny weight that shifted the entire room's energy. It was as if the air crackled with unsaid words. I turned it over, my fingers tracing the delicate engravings. There had to be something inside, something that could bridge the gap between my brother and me. The creature recoiled slightly, but his eyes never left mine, shimmering with a mixture of pleading and rage. I steadied myself and unclasped the locket. It clicked open, and inside, I found not a photo, but a small, crumpled note. My heart raced as I unfolded it. The words were shaky and familiar. It was Samuel's handwriting. "Help me," it said, followed by a string of numbers that made no sense to me at first. My breath hitched as I realized they weren't just numbers. They were coordinates. They pointed somewhere nearby, maybe even somewhere I had been. "Samuel," I breathed, a mix of hope and dread washing over me. What do these mean? The creature's form distorted, and it let out a low growl that echoed in the space, reverberated through my bones. I glanced at my mother, who was now backed against the wall, her face colorless. "Samuel, please," she begged, her voice breaking. "We need to leave. This isn't safe." But I couldn't move. I had come too far to turn back. I had to figure out what these coordinates meant, how they were tied to the ache in my heart. "Just give me a minute," I whispered, my eyes glued to the creature, searching for any sign of recognition, something to pull me closer. The wailing returned, louder this time. It felt as if the walls were closing in, that Samuel was begging me to release him from whatever held him captive in this darkness. My eyes drifted back to the locket. What did he need me to do? Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted sharply again, as if the world had been tipped on its axis. The shadows became dense, crowding in around the creature. I staggered back, suddenly aware that something uninvited lurked behind us, a new presence that raised the hair on my neck. "Samuel," I yelled, panic knotting my stomach. The creature jerked, as if it understood my fear.
It glanced back briefly before locking its eyes back onto mine. There was urgency in its gaze, a warning that felt imminent. And then, just as it had before, the ground shuddered violently beneath my feet. Dust filled the air, and I stumbled, my focus shattered. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. A sensation of dread gripped me. "Get out!" my mother screamed, grasping my arm with an iron grip. But I couldn't tear my focus from the creature, the twisted reflection of my brother standing there, waiting for an answer that I hadn't yet discovered. Before I could respond, the wind surged again, a ferocious gale that threatened to swallow us whole. I turned back, desperate for clarity, only to see the shadows flicker dangerously. That's when everything went dark. I gasped as the darkness enveloped me. It was a thick, suffocating black that made it hard to breathe. My heart raced, echoing loud in my ears. Was this the end? I couldn't see anything, not even my hands in front of my face. I felt my mother's grip tighten around my arm, but in the chaos of sound and shadow, it was as if even her voice had vanished. The wailing had stopped, replaced by a deafening silence that made my skin crawl. "Hold on," I managed to whisper, hoping she could hear me. I squeezed her hand, trying to anchor us both, but then the world lurched sideways again, and I barely managed to stay on my feet. I focused all my energy on Samuel, the coordinates flickering in my mind like a neon sign in the fog. Where? I thought desperately. Where do I need to go? Then, just as suddenly as it had vanished, sight returned. My surroundings reshaped like a bad film reel, the shadows peeling away to reveal a different room. It was familiar but warped, as if every item had been placed with hatred. The walls were painted a sickly green, the air thick with the scent of mildew and abandonment. "Mom," I whispered,
fear creeping back in. I could see her now, her eyes wide with confusion. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice shaky. "I don't know." As I stepped further into the room, I noticed something on the far wall. Scratched into the paint were the same coordinates from the note. I could feel panic rising in my throat as I approached the markings. "Why are they here?" I muttered, my fingers tracing the numbers. "What does it mean?" The creature emerged from the shadows, its form more defined, less ethereal than before. It loomed over me like a protective guardian, yet its expression spoke of desperation. "Samuel," I called, almost pleading. "Is this where you are?" The creature did not respond, but its intense gaze bore into me, and I felt something shift within. I knew it was urging me to act, to dig deeper. The atmosphere tensed again, a ripple of energy sparking between us. It was as if we were sharing a moment, a connection beyond words. I turned back to my mother, who was still on edge, anxiety etched in every line of her face.
"This is dangerous," she warned, glancing at the creature. "We need to leave." But I shook my head, resolute. No, I can't abandon him. He's trying to tell me something. Just then, a loud crash came from outside, reverberating through the room. My pulse jumped as I instinctively turned toward the sound. "That wasn't us," I said slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. Then I saw it, a shadow darting past the window. My heart dropped into my shoes. Someone or something was out there, and I had just been pulled deeper into the chaos surrounding Samuel. "Stay close," I instructed my mother, steeling myself. "I won't let anything happen to us, but we need to find a way out. We can't be trapped here." In that moment, clarity ignited within me. I had to reach Samuel. But before I could move, another stifling darkness crept in, colder than before. Then I heard a voice. "Help me." It was faint but unmistakable. The sound of my brother's cry rang in my ears. And then everything went quiet again. I felt my heart skip a beat. It was Samuel's voice, so close yet so far. I wanted to scream, to run toward the sound, but my body wouldn't listen. The darkness pressed down on me again, heavy as a weight. "Can you hear that?" I asked my mom, straining to catch any hint of movement, any sign that might lead us to him. She nodded, her face pale. "Yes, but where is it coming from?" Before I could answer, the creature stepped forward, blocking the wall of shadow creeping in again. Its presence shifted the air around us, bringing a moment of clarity. A small glow flickered from the creature, illuminating the room just enough to see clearly. It turned its head towards the far corner, and I followed its gaze. There, in the farthest edge of the room, a door I hadn't noticed stood ajar. A faint light flickered from within, teasing us with promises of escape, or perhaps danger. "Do you think that leads to him?" I whispered, my instincts screaming that this was a key, a chance. "I don't know," my mother replied, her voice low and cautious. "But we have to be careful. We can't just walk into more trouble." But the decision was already made in my mind. I'd come too far. Samuel needed me. I took a step toward the door, heart thudding in rhythm with my thoughts. The moment I reached for the handle, I felt the creature's presence urging me forward, its warmth pulsing like a heartbeat. As I turned the handle, a loud crack echoed through the room, like thunder, but it was coming from the outside. My thoughts raced. What if someone was out there, looking for us? Or worse, what if they were coming to find my brother? Tightening my grip on the doorknob, I pushed it open. The door creaked, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. My stomach churned with unease. "Mom, we should go." I stepped into the stairwell, but my feet felt like they were sinking into quicksand. The air was thick, tinged with mildew and fear. My heartbeat was a drum in my ears, and I glanced back at my mom. "Are you sure?" she asked, every line on her face etched with worry. "Samuel needs us," I insisted, determination overtaking my fear. I descended the stairs, each step echoing in the silence, as if the house were holding its breath. The glow from the creature behind me illuminated the path, flickering like a heartbeat. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, an unsettling chill washed over me, the air crackling with anticipation. Then something rustled behind me. I spun around. The creature's glow flickered, casting shadows dancing on the walls. "What was that?" my mother whispered, her voice raw with fear. I felt an icy hand of dread clutch at my throat. I turned back toward the doorway at the bottom of the stairs. That's when I saw it, a figure, barely outlined in the dim light. "Samuel?" I called, hope and fear twisting within me. But instead, I heard a low growl, thick with malice.
The shadows coiled tighter around us, and the door slammed shut behind my mother. Time froze. "What's happening?" she shouted. I struggled to breathe as I realized we were no longer alone. And suddenly, everything went dark again. My breath caught in my throat. The darkness felt suffocating. I blinked, but nothing changed. It was as if the night itself was pressing down on me. A moment later, the creature's soft glow returned, illuminating the figure that had emerged. It stepped closer, revealing a face, twisted and familiar. A scream clawed at my lips, but I forced it down, shocked into silence. "Samuel?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The figure paused, tilting its head. "It's me," it said, but the voice was wrong. It was deeper, almost guttural. "No," I shook my head, my heart racing. "You're not him." In a blink, the glow faded, and the creature lunged forward. The air shifted, heavy with hostility. I felt a surge of panic as I grabbed my mother's arm. "Run!" I shouted, but the shadows seemed to thicken as though they were alive, snatching at her ankles. I pulled her toward the staircase, the only safe place I could think of, but the growling echoed, bouncing off the walls like a taunting song. "Wait!" my mom cried, her voice rising with fear. "What if it's really him?" "No, it's not. He's—" My words trailed off as something strange flickered in the periphery of my mind. A memory flashed. A fall, a scream, blood. I couldn't think about that now. I had to move. I dragged my mother back toward the stairwell. We stumbled down the steps, the glow from the creature now a faint blip in the distance. As I reached for the handle to close the door behind us, a figure materialized at the bottom of the stairs. "Help!" It was Samuel's voice, desperate and weak. I hesitated. I wanted to believe it was him. "Wait," I called, caught in the pull of hope. "Let me out," he begged, his hands pushing against something unseen. The shadows swirled around us, swirling like a storm.
"This isn't right," I said, my gut churning. "We can't trust it." "Just let me out, please," Samuel screamed, voice faltering. I shook my head, heart racing. "No!" But then the creature stepped forward, blocking our way. The glow illuminated its form, and I could see twisted features and hollow eyes. It was protecting something. I couldn't tell if it was protecting us or hiding something. "Do you believe him?" my mother whispered, fear etched across her face. "What if it isn't him?" I replied, feeling torn. But the fear in Samuel's voice, the desperation, it was hard to ignore. Another growl echoed in the room. My time was running out. "Samuel?" I called again, desperation seeping into my voice. "Tell me something only you would know." He stammered, as if scrambling for words. I hate olives." I hesitated. That was true. My fingers clenched around the doorknob, sweat pooling in my palms. "Is it really you?" I questioned, my heart pounding. Before he could respond, the creature howled, a sound that tore through the air. All at once, the shadows erupted, swirling around the bottom of the stairwell, brightening the dark, twisting my perception of reality. I made my choice. I couldn't let Samuel get lost in that haze of shadows. I turned to my mother. "We have to go, now!" I bolted forward, yanking her along. We plunged deeper into the darkness, leaving behind the voice that still echoed in my ears, leaving uncertainty in our wake. But something followed us. It was growing nearer, relentless and hungry. As I reached the next door, I could hear the murmur of something behind me, calling out, a horrible sound growing louder. I pushed the door open, dread pooling in my stomach. That's when I saw it, a flicker of bright light that seemed like salvation. But just as quickly as I noticed it, the shadows lunged, and I felt icy fingers brush the nape of my neck. Everything went cold. I stumbled through the threshold, dragging my mother with me. We barreled into the brightness, a stark contrast to the suffocating darkness left behind. But my heart raced, half convinced the shadows were still reaching for us, clawing at the edges of my mind. When my eyes adjusted, I realized we were in the living room of the old house, a place that felt foreign yet achingly familiar. The sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating dust particles dancing in the air. The stillness was unsettling, as if the world held its breath after a chaotic storm. "Are we safe?" my mother gasped, her face pale and drawn. She glanced around, as if expecting something to leap from the shadows at any moment. "I think so," I replied, though my voice wavered. "I don't know what just happened." "What was that thing?" she whispered, fear lacing every word. Was it really Samuel?" I swallowed hard, the weight of that question pressing down on me. "I don't know. The way it looked, it hurt to see it." The urgency of my brother's plea still echoed in my mind, leaving behind a trail of regret. My mother took a shaky breath, her hands trembling as she rubbed her arms,
trying to digest everything that had just unfolded. But you couldn't trust it. We had to get away. I nodded, but felt a chasm of doubt opening within me. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something unresolved. Yet the thought of going back made every nerve in my body scream with dread. What did Samuel mean by needing closure? I pondered aloud. I don't know, Lucy, she said, wiping tears from her cheeks. I was trying to protect you. I thought keeping it all buried would help us heal. Her voice cracked, and her eyes brimmed with sorrow. But it looks like we were wrong. Silence settled heavily between us. I glanced around the room, feeling a sense of foreboding inching back. The memories of the house flooded my mind. The laughter, the arguments, and all the things left unsaid. I remembered those stories from grandmother's journals, the veiled warnings nestled within them. There was so much we still didn't understand, so much we had swept under the rug. Maybe we need to go back, I said suddenly, surprising myself. My heart raced at the idea, but part of me felt a pull toward that abandoned mystery. Are you out of your mind? My mother hissed, her face tightening. You want to go back there, after everything we just escaped? We don't know what that was, or why it showed itself. I need to understand, Mom. Samuel, he was angry, and maybe that's not the only thing we're up against. My mother's jaw clenched, and I could see the battle waging inside her, her instincts to protect, battling against the inerrant need for truth. Lucy, I'm not the only one who needs closure, I urged, my voice softening. We both do. We need to face what's been haunting our family. Otherwise, it will never let us go. Reluctantly, she nodded, her eyes reflecting the pain of grief and betrayal, but also the flicker of resolve. But we do it together. No running off without a plan, understood? Agreed. I felt a rush of relief wash over me. We would confront the shadows together. As we walked toward the attic door once more, my heart thudded heavily in my chest. The air felt electric, charged with the remnants of the darkness we'd just faced. The dim light flickered unnaturally as we stepped up to the threshold, sending an uneasy shiver down my spine. But as I took a deep breath and opened the door, the world beyond seemed hauntingly quiet. It was like stepping into another realm, where fear wove itself into the very fabric of the air. I might regret this, my mother whispered, squeezing my hand tightly. Let's just face it together, I reassured her, pushing down my own trepidation. And as we stepped forward, uncertainty loomed like a heavy fog. The thudding had returned, steady and relentless. What had we stirred by simply confronting our past?
The answers were still hidden in the twisted shadows, waiting for us. I hadn't felt ready. We weren't prepared for what might emerge. But as I faced the darkness again, I realized there were no perfect resolutions. There was only the journey ahead, one that would either free us or ensnare us deeper in the tides of our family's dark legacy. I had never been back to that neighborhood since moving to a different city. Sometimes I wonder if the echoes of Samuel still wander those forgotten halls, or if the shadows have finally been exiled. But I know one thing for certain. Our ghosts linger, waiting for a moment when we might dare to ask again. And whether it's natural or supernatural is a question that remains as elusive as the truth itself.